How are the U.S. men's national team players abroad doing this season? We are now over halfway through the 2023-2024 season in Europe, and to be honest, this has been a great season for most of the Americans abroad. Today, we're going to go through the main guys from the U.S. men's national team and rate their season abroad from 1 to 5 stars so far, of course, because we're roughly a little bit over halfway through the season. So if you haven't been able to follow all of them closely, well, then you got nothing to fear because the tactical manager is here. Hi, if you're new here, I'm Filippo, and welcome to Tactical Manager TV, and welcome to a U.S. men's national team abroad episode. This is not the weekend recap. This is the one where I judge the living crap out of the players. If you have been following the channel long enough, you most certainly know that we report on the U.S. men's national team players abroad every single week on Monday, doing a weekend recap. And as I've said in the past, I have scouted more Americans abroad than the CIA, and I'm proud of it, just like the CIA. And you know, all this scouting forces me to wake up early every single weekend. I know some people love mornings, and we call those people morning people, and I hate morning people. How do you even function that early? Or maybe I just hate mornings, or people, or both. Keep in mind that for this episode, I will not go through all the players that we normally cover in the weekend recap on the U.S. men's national team abroad series. I have mainly selected the ones that are starters for the national team and a few others that can possibly fight for a starting spot or are the first option off the bench, something like that. And if you want to help the channel, make sure to hit the like button on this video right now and let me know in the comment section of this video who are the top 5 U.S. men's national team performers abroad for their clubs this season. And holy crap, that was a long question, and so far. Or don't, because you might be watching this video while you're taking a shit, and multitasking is tough. So make sure you wipe, hit the like button, and wash your hands. Not necessarily in that order. Actually, not in that order. You might want to wash your hands before you hit the like button because you're probably watching it on the phone if you're on the toilet. Okay, let's play the intro and let's start rating these players. Okay, so let's start with the goalkeepers and work our way through all the way to the center forward. So for goalkeepers, there's honestly only one player worth mentioning, and that is Matt Turner from Nottingham Forest. Because the other two I could probably talk about would be Gaga Slonina, which based on advanced analytics, he hasn't really been doing well in Belgium, but I don't think he's relevant at the moment from a U.S. men's national team senior team perspective. The other one would have been Ethan Horvath, but he has like 0 minutes this season, and he just got a move from Nottingham Forest to the English second division. So I can't really rate their seasons. I also haven't really watched a full 90 minutes from Gaga Slonina, so I'm not comfortable rating the season of a player that I haven't even watched one game. So I'm going to rate Matt Turner. And for Matt Turner, as much as it breaks my heart to do this because he seems like a great guy and he has an incredible story, his season is a 1. He got benched at a certain moment during the season. Then he recovered his position. He has been performing not so great, to say the least. It hasn't really been good. And now Nottingham Forest, under Nuno Espirito Santo, they have signed another goalkeeper. And it seems like Matt Turner will be benched for a foreseeable future unless that goalkeeper is injured or suspended or has diarrhea or something. So it's just not going to happen. Turner has been benched. His season has been terrible. I hope he bounces back at some point. He's still our number 1, but that's the rating I give it, 1 out of 5. And if you guys haven't noticed, I have so many thoughts on these players that I'm not really scripting a lot of this. I'm just going on camera and I'm word vomiting everything I know about these players abroad because I cover them every single weekend. So Matt Turner, 1 star. Now, let's go to the fullbacks. The first one being Sargent Dest from PSV. Last season, he really struggled on the loan to AC Milan, and obviously we know about his struggles with Barcelona. He got a loan to PSV, and he's been doing great. Has been a fantastic bounce back season from Sargent Dest. Sure, he had some shaky moments in the Champions League, but he has been quite dominant in the Eredivisie. He's making it look easy. Now, I can't give him a 5 out of 5 this season because he hasn't been perfect, but he's been pretty damn good. I'm going to give Sargent Dest a 4.5 out of 5, which is an amazing season. And with that said, there is a chance he could be back with Barcelona next season since Xavi is leaving, even though I don't think that'll happen. Yeah, man, Sargent Dest has been really good this season, and I'm truly enjoying the highlight reels that he posts every single week on Instagram after he plays a match. Even when he got crushed by Arsenal 4-0, he still posted a highlight reel because consistency is key. Next up, we have A-Rob, or Anthony Robinson from Fulham. And let me tell you this, he has been nothing short of fantastic in the English Premier League this season. Great defensively, contributing a lot on offense as well. It's the best season of his career, and he's not only an average left back in the Premier League, he is actually a good Premier League left back. He's fantastic. He's clearly our best left back. It's not even close. And I'm not saying he's among the best left backs in the world, but he is among the best left backs in the Premier League. Probably a top 10 left back in the Premier League this season. He's been really good. He might even get a move, even though I kind of like him staying at Fulham. With that said, for A-Rob, I have to give him a 5 out of 5. There's really nothing I can't complain about him this season. And one thing I notice about him is his crossing ain't that great when he tries to do actual regular lobbed crosses for a header. But I think he finally understood that when he whips in a very, strong, low cross, he's actually effective. And that's what he has been doing. And that's how he got, I think, 3 or 4 assists this season that way. So A-Rob, to me, it's a 5 out of 5. Now, there's one more fullback that is worth mentioning, and that is Joe Scally. Because nowadays, Scally is essentially the backup to Serginho Dest and the backup to A-Rob. And Joe Scally has been having a fine season in the Bundesliga. He's holding his own in a very tough league, but it doesn't seem like he's improving much or that he made any big improvements in his game for the past 2 seasons. He didn't make any big jump. He just continues to be a very consistent and reliable fullback for Borussia Mönchengladbach, even though this season he showed a little bit of versatility because he has been playing a lot as a right central center back instead of a right back in multiple occasions. Then he also played as a right back and he also played as a left back. But as I said multiple times, you want to be versatile, but you don't want to be a duck. And I talk about this, so sorry if I am getting repetitive about it. A duck is someone, a duck is a duck, but he walks poorly, flies poorly, swims poorly. He's just shit at everything. And I'm not saying Joe Scally's that. I'm just saying you want to be versatile, but you want to also master some aspects of your game and be really good at it. Joe Scally's very well-rounded, but he doesn't offer much going forward. And on defense, he's reliable, just struggles with a few world-class forwards like Bayern players. So he's been doing fine this season. I'm going to give Joe Scally a 3 out of 5. It's not a fantastic season, but it's above average. Good season. Now let's go to the center backs. And the first one I want to talk about is Tim Ream from Fulham. And I'm going to give his season a 2 out of 5. He's showing some signs of slowing down. I mean, the guy ain't getting any younger. What he did in 2022 and that led to him being in the World Cup was big, tremendous, fantastic. And somehow he had the best season of his career at age 35. But this season, he hasn't been quite as good. He hasn't been horrible. He's still a reliable center back in the Premier League. But there were moments and some instances where I would say he was a bit shaky, slower, had an injury that didn't help too much. And there's even a case to be made that maybe he's even gotten benched for Fulham. They did renew his contract, but he definitely has slowed down. So I'm giving Tim Ream a 2 out of 5. Slightly below average season because last season, he put my expectations very high. And unfortunately, it came back to bite him for this rating, even though I am 100% sure Tim Ream doesn't give a crap about this rating. And he shouldn't. Next up, we have another player in the Premier League, another center back in the Premier League, and that is Chris Richards from Crystal Palace. So it took some time for Richards to actually get minutes, and then when he finally did, and he has been getting consistent minutes for quite some time, he's been mainly been played out of position as a 6, as a central defensive midfielder. He's been holding his own, he's been doing just fine there. I'm sure it's helping quite a bit on his development, especially on the ball and in terms of positioning, tactically. He's definitely improving in that. And he also looks quite bigger, more athletic than he did in previous seasons, just stronger. And recently, Marc Guéhi also got injured, the center back, so maybe Richards will play more as a center back. Crystal Palace also signed a central defensive midfielder, which I don't know if he's a good player or not, but he played last game when Marc Guéhi was injured, halfway through the season here. I'll say this, Chris Richards' season, in terms of his development and starting to get minutes in the Premier League, he's been holding his own just fine. He doesn't look out of place, even though he's playing out of position. So I'm going to give Richards a 3.5 out of 5. I think overall for what's happening with Crystal Palace, they also have a coach that is like 250 years old at this point, and Richards being played out of position, holding his own, improving. I'm going to give it a 3.5 out of 5. Next up, we have Cameron Carter-Vickers from Celtic. So Carter Vickers had a few injuries here and there, so he missed roughly half of the games this season, or a little less than half. He also doesn't really seem to be challenged in Scotland because Celtic is so much better than the other teams, and he's a center back for them, so it won't really get him exposed or get him, to be busy. He's busy on the ball, getting a lot of touches, passing, but not defending, which is probably the primary duty of a center back. You want him to do both these days as a modern center back. You want him to be a ball-playing defender, but he's not tested as much as a defender these days in Scotland. And he didn't look really good when he played in the Champions League, which is when Celtic actually has to do some defending. So I don't know. I don't think it's been a good season from Carter Vickers, not because of his performances, but just because he should have left Scotland by now. He's not being challenged there. He's been injured for like half of the season. So I'm giving his season a 2 at best. I think slightly below average. I just don't like the way it's going. But again, he hasn't really been bad, but I mean, like, if you put an MLS player in USL, could you say he had a good season if he was just like doing his thing there? And then when he played, I guess, against an MLS team, which would be the Champions League that I'm talking about, how Celtic struggled there. I don't know. It hasn't been a good season for me, from my eyes, from my point of view, for Cameron Carter Vickers. Next up is Austin Trusty from Sheffield. And this is how I'll put it. Trusty has been struggling with his team because Sheffield is essentially an EFL Championship side disguised as a Premier League team. But he is showing some promise. He is challenging himself in the Premier League, and he's had some good games. Sheffield will get relegated, and so will Austin Trusty, and he'll probably be a very good EFL Championship defender next season, and maybe one day he'll be good enough to actually play for a Premier League side that cannot get relegated, because Sheffield is definitely going down. But I'll say this. Trusty has taken a step forward this season, and I like the direction he's heading. But because the season has been terrible in terms of who he's facing and the teams being so much better, I'm giving him a 2.5 out of 5, which is an average season. Which actually means he's been doing fine because Sheffield is terrible. If you can get an average rating with that team, you're among their best performers. Now we're off to the midfielders. And why don't we start with Weston Mckennie from Juventus, or how I like to call him these days, Mr. Reliable. Because you see, he has been as consistent as Greg Berhalter, but from like opposite ends. Like, Berhalter is consistently bad, and occasionally he gets a few things right. Weston Mckennie has been consistently good, and occasionally he's been getting a few things wrong for Juventus this season. To put it into other words, he's been fantastic. It has been an amazing comeback season from Weston Mckennie. He's a locked-in starter and one of the most important players for Juventus that is currently in second place in the Serie A, the first division of Italy, which is among the best leagues in the world, probably a top 3 league. Mckennie has been fantastic after that terrible loan spell with Leeds, and for that reason, I'm giving Mckennie a 5 out of 5 rating for this season. He's also shown a lot of improvement from his fitness. He's in better shape. Technical ability on the ball. He's been looking even as a playmaker at times. Mckennie has been probably a top 3 performer for Juventus this season, which early in the season, he wasn't even going to stay with them. They were trying to get rid of him, but because of a few injuries, he was given an opportunity. He rose to the occasion, and honestly, he deserves a 5 out of 5 this season. He's been tremendous. Next up, we have another American in Italy, and his name is Yunus Musah, and he plays for Milan. And I don't want to be pessimistic about Musah or even negative, but he hasn't really been showing much progress from last season to this season. He had a few good games here and there for Milan, but he also had some very normal games where he was just like on cruise control, just a passenger on the field. He had opportunities this season due to injuries, and he didn't take full advantage of it. He has been benched, obviously, as I'm saying, and he did get a minor injury, and his minutes have gone down quite a bit since. He's been coming in the last 5 to 10 minutes of most matches just to help them hold the lead. It's not really a game changer. It's not terrible, and honestly, I expected this for the first season in Milan, but he also hasn't been great. So I'm going to give Yunus Musah a 2.5 out of 5, which is an average season. Now, next year, I'm definitely going to be tougher on Yunus Musah when rating his season because he has to take a step forward. We have to see him be more proactive in games, which I still haven't seen him do that for his club. We've seen him do that for the US men's national team, but I never saw him do that for Valencia, maybe 1 or 2 games. And for Milan, I would say probably just 1 or 2 also at best. Another American abroad I want to talk about is Johnny Cardoso. I can't really rate his season with Real Betis because he literally just got there. He locked in a starting spot already 3 games in, but I can't rate that. But I'm going to rate his season with Internacional, which was 2023. I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. And he was fantastic for them in the Copa Libertadores, which is the Champions League of South America. For that reason, he gets a 4 out of 5. Because in the Brasileirão, the Brazilian League, he was okay. He was good, but not as good as the Libertadores, which was a knockout round tournament that's very tough to play. If he was also good in the Brasileirão with Internacional, I would have given him a 5 out of 5. But he wasn't. So I'll give him a 4 out of 5. And the Real Betis season, I guess time will tell. The other American I was going to rate was Tyler Adams, but I think it would be unfair to rate Tyler because he's been injured all season. You can't give him a 1 for being injured all season. I mean, technically the season is a 0, but not because of him. It's not his fault. So I'm going to skip on Tyler Adams. Let's just hope he comes back early enough that when I do the ratings at the end of the season, I can give Tyler a rating. But right now, it would be unfair to give him a bad rating. So the next player we have on the list here is Gio Reyna from Borussia Dortmund. Actually, he's not at Borussia Dortmund anymore, but the rating I'm about to give him is based on the Borussia Dortmund days. So as you may know, Gio Reyna was loaned out to Nottingham Forest, so he's not playing for Dortmund anymore, but let's talk about his time at Dortmund. It was terrible. He came into the season injured. Also, Terzic just literally hates Gio Reyna and only played him 270 minutes in the Bundesliga halfway through the season. Barely anything, even though Gio Reyna last season saved his ass a few times by scoring goals and getting assists. Hopefully, at the end of the season, this rating that I'm about to give Gio will change with his time at Nottingham Forest. And I think it will. If he just gets minutes, it'll definitely go up. Because if you look only at his time with Borussia Dortmund this season, his season will have to be rated a 1. It was terrible. Nothing good happened. So now that he's with Nottingham Forest, if he simply plays, it's going to go up from that. If he plays well, it'll go up quite a bit. Let me know if I'm being unfair, but honestly, when you look at Gio Reyna's season with Dortmund, it has to be a 1. Remember, I'm not rating the player, I'm rating the season, and his season has been a 1. And if you made it this far in the video, make sure to drop a like in the video if you haven't already. Now let's talk about Malik Tilman from PSV. And his season has been a bit weird. He's had some big ups, some moments where he was incredible, controlling the tempo of the midfield, playing as a midfielder. He was incredible. And then he had plenty of down moments where he would disappear in some games that were a bit tougher. There was also the oversleeping incident where he overslept and then, just the coach just didn't even put him in the game at all, not even to make the bench. I still think he's missing some good performances against some big-time opponents. I know he played well against Arsenal's B team, but I want to see how Malik Tilman will do when PSV faces, for example, Borussia Dortmund in the Champions League knockout rounds. I am seeing some progress, which I like, but I can't give him a rating as high as I gave Serginho Dest that has been far better for PSV than Malik Tilman. So I'm giving Malik Tilman a 3.5 out of 5, which means he's having a very good season. Last but not least for the midfielders, I have Luca De La Torre. And I know some of you are going to say, well, he's not going to be a starter, but I think he's one of those, kind of like Johnny, that's fighting for a spot that could maybe start for the United States at times, or at least a lock in the roster for now. And he's been on the rise lately for Celta de Vigo, so I must talk about Luca very quickly. And he started struggling the season, but he kind of bounced back lately for a struggling Celta de Vigo. Celta de Vigo has been terrible, and he's mainly playing for them out wide. There were moments this season where he played as a central midfielder, but he's mainly playing as an outside midfielder, like a left midfielder or right midfielder, and even a winger, and he's been playing well when he does that. I'm going to rate his season a 3 out of 5. It was honestly going to be a 2 if I did it early January, but he has bounced back lately. He has 3 goals and 2 assists in the past 5 matches, which it matters. 5 matches is quite a bit for the season, and I'm giving Luca De La Torre a 3 out of 5. Okay, we're almost done with the video. Now we're going to go to the wingers. And if we're talking about players that are starters or close to starting on the wing, it's honestly just going to be Christian Pulisic and Tim Weah. The other guys would be like Kevin Paredes. He's honestly been having a good season for Wolfsburg, but I don't think he's close to starting. If Pulisic or Weah are not available, you just start Gio Reyna or Malik Tilman out wide. Other players that I could go rating would be like Brendan Aronson, but his rating would be easy. It would be a 1 this season. It's been terrible. All these players are a massive drop-off from Pulisic and Weah. And I'm not going to rate Luca Coleocho, 1, because he's injured, and 2, because he hasn't been with the US men's national team at all, so I can't rate his season. It wouldn't make sense to add Luca Coleocho. So like I said, the other winger options would probably be Gio Reyna and Malik Tilman, and we already did their rating on the midfield section. So let's talk about Christian Pulisic and Tim Weah. First, Christian Pulisic. And he's been amazing for Milan this season. There were some moments where he struggled, but his overall season has been tremendous in Italy. He has 11 goal contributions in the Serie A at the time of this recording, along with many good performances. He just hasn't been as consistent as Weston Mckennie, but keep in mind, What he does is tougher: score goals, get assists. Mckennie and A-Rob don't have the same responsibility that Christian Pulisic has of contributing with actual goals. Sure, they have assists this season and they can score here and there, but Pulisic's primary duty is to create goal-scoring opportunities, get assists, get goals. It's tougher to do that consistently. Mckennie and A-Rob have different roles. Now, that's not to take away their credit. They have been far more consistent than Pulisic. Maybe not far, but more consistent than Pulisic. With that said, I'm going to give Pulisic a 4.75 out of 5. Almost a 5. Almost as much as Mckennie and A-Rob, but because he hasn't been as consistent, I'm taking 0.25 out of it, if that even matters at all. Now let's talk about Tim Weah. And Tim Weah has been mainly playing as a right wingback for Juventus. He's been reliable, but not great. He plays for a great team that's in second place in the Italian first division. So I'm going to give Weah a 3 out of 5, which is slightly above average season. Look, I think that's his level. A backup and sometimes a starter for Juventus. He's reliable. I don't think Weah is much above that. So when we put it into that perspective, I'm giving Weah a slightly above average season. I'll say a 3 out of 5. I think that's fair. Which is also funny because I put him on the winger section because for the United States, he plays as a winger. But for Juventus, Tim Weah plays as a right wing back. Even though he pushes very high up the field, he has a lot more defensive responsibilities than he has for the United States. Last but not least, we have the center forwards. And why don't we start with our top center forward at the moment, which is Balogun from Monaco. So Balogun got a big move this summer, leaving Arsenal, even though he was playing for Rennes in France, but he left Arsenal and went to Monaco. And so far this season, he has 4 goals and 4 assists in 15 matches, which is not awful, but also not good, especially when you take into consideration that he scored over 20 goals in France last season for a worse team. And also want to put one thing into context, his performances in general, regardless of the stats, haven't really been good. He's currently dealing with a minor shoulder injury, but, I'm just going to say it. His season has not been good, and it probably won't be as good as last season. It definitely won't be. He's not scoring over 20 goals. For that reason, I'm going to give Balogun a 1.5 out of 5. Not because he's not going to score 20 goals, just the season has been very mediocre and disappointing. I'm not worried. Long term, I think he'll be fine, but we're evaluating this season and it hasn't been good. So 1.5 out of 5 is my rating. Next up, we have Ricardo Pepe from PSV, which is technically the backup option for the center forward position, even though for the US men's national team, he's been outperforming Balogun. That is fair to say, but Balogun is still my number 1. And Pepe has had his moments this season, but he's also barely playing under Luc De Jong. That's the locked-in starter for PSV at the center forward position. Pepe's not getting many minutes. I like his move to PSV long-term, but short-term, this season, it hasn't been great for Pepe. His big moment was scoring the goal that got PSV to the Champions League round of 16, but outside of that, he's barely playing. Barely doing anything. Because look at this. We're roughly halfway through the season. We're actually after halfway through the season, right? A couple games after. And Ricardo Pepe has around 200 minutes in the Eredivisie. That's not a lot. That's like 2 games. In the Champions League, he has 100 minutes in the group stage. But that's only because they gave him the full 90 minutes after they were already qualified in the last game. This season has been good for Pepe to learn from Luc De Jong and get some experience at a high level, Champions League and all that. But we got to call a spade, and the season hasn't really been good, and we haven't seen much progress because he's not getting many minutes. I think long-term, this is a great season. But if we're only evaluating how it's going for him in terms of performances, minutes, etc., it's also like a 1.5 or 1.75 out of 5. It's roughly as bad as Balogun. Could even say, I don't know, maybe worse, but I'm going to give him a 1.5 out of 5. Lastly, we have Josh Sargent from Norwich, and I think he's still relevant for the US men's national team. I think he's our 3rd best option, so I'm going to talk about him. And he's honestly been scoring a lot this season. He has 1 goal every 100 minutes for Norwich in the EFL Championship for a total of 6 goals and 1 assist in 10 matches. He missed 20 games because of an ankle injury, but he's been playing great every time he has played and is showing a ton of progress. And honestly, if he did not get injured, I think we were going to look at a 20 to 25 goal season from Sargent this year with Norwich in the 2nd division of Italy. He's still probably going to get to around 10 to 15, even though he already missed 20 games. I'm going to rate his season a 3 out of 5, mainly because he got unlucky with the injury. If he didn't get injured, it would probably be around a 3.5 or 4 if he obviously kept it consistent and continued to score goals for Norwich. All right, everyone, thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to drop a like before you go and comment down below which are your top 5 U.S. men's national team abroad players this season. And with the ratings that I gave down below, let me know your thoughts. And don't forget, every Monday we do the U.S. men's national team abroad weekend recap. And at the end of the season, I'll probably rate every American abroad's season. And we'll see if some of the ones that I just did, if the rating will change. I want to thank you all very much for watching and have a great day.